The Fenwick Eagle is one of the most requested pieces of fishing equipment that have ever been on my channel. Now, I finally got my hands on one, and I'm gonna go over my thoughts on this product. So stay tuned, it's gonna be a good one. Before I go into everything else, let's go over the specs on the rod that I have right here. So this one right here, this is the EGL W70M-XFS, and this is technically on their walleye line. This one right here is a 7-foot medium power rod. This is an extra fast action. You've got 7+ tip for guides. Your line weight is 6 to 12 pound. Your lure weight is 1/8 to 3/4 ounce. This is a one-piece rod, and it's coming in at around $99.99. Now, as for the features that really stuck out to me on this rod, those are going to be the 24-30-ton graphite blend. It's going to be a tailored foregrip. You have a contoured rod butt, and you have stainless steel guide frames. Now, as for looks, Fenwick definitely went the plain route on this rod. It is pretty much just an all gray rod with your handle right here and then a full cork. They really didn't do too much in terms of the design, but as you guys know on the channel, I like that. I like when rod companies keep things pretty plain. I think, with the rods, right, with reels, you can get a little more fancy with it, but with rods, you've got to have something that just fishes well, and the more stuff that you put on a rod, the fancier you try to make it, a lot of times it ends up actually affecting just the full blank of the rod. I mean, I really don't want much on a rod besides the blank, right? I want a little bit of cork and a nice handle, and that's it. I mean, that's really what I want in a rod, and Fenwick did that, which I think is pretty cool. I am also a huge fan of full cork handle rods. I know a lot of people that do not like that, but I personally do, so I think it's nice that they did add some rods in their line that have this. Now, as for versatility and function, this is, in my opinion, one of the biggest selling points on this rod, is they have a ton of different models that can cover a whole ton of different fish species. This one right here is actually in their walleye line, but guys, it's a 7-foot medium extra fast. That's a perfect bass rod. This will work in, for an all-around bass fishing rod, a 7-foot medium is the exact thing that I want, right? So this would work great for bass. There's a ton of other models as well. I have right here, they have the walleye ones. They have just their regular casting rod. They have a bass specific one. They have a trout and panfish, salmon steelhead. They even have a fly fishing one. They've got a travel rod, which is like a 3 or 4 piece. I mean, there is a ton of different Fenwick Eagle models depending on what fish you're targeting, freshwater specifically. But pretty much any freshwater fish, they've got a rod to cover, which I think is really cool. And each one's a little different. They all kind of have different setups. Some of them have a split grip. Some are just a shorter cork handle. Some of them are a little bit different through here. Obviously the fly rod's much different. There's 2-piece versus 1-piece. There's a lot of differences on these rods, which I think is really, really neat. As for the durability and overall build quality, Fenwick was really lacking in this category for a while there. I honestly thought there was a time where I kind of thought Fenwick was just done. I thought the company wasn't even running anymore. I didn't know if they were continuing to make new products. They just went really quiet for a while. I didn't hear much about them. Maybe I just wasn't following the company close enough. But I feel like they've really come back into action the last couple years. They've kind of redone a lot of their rods and reels, and I feel like it's really worked out for them because this product is extremely good quality. It feels awesome in your hand, and I haven't had any complaints at the shop of these rods breaking or any type of defect to them. I haven't heard of anything happening with them yet. And if it were to happen, word on the street is Fenwick has a very good customer service, so I believe they would be able to help you out on anything as well. As for ergonomics and feel, this rod feels great in your hands. What I like about it as well is right here, they actually have the blank being shown. It basically your rod seat, your hand goes and touches that when you have a reel on, and so you actually can feel the full blank even underneath the cork, which I like when rod companies do that. I do think it helps with the sensitivity. The blank here is pretty comfortable in your hand as well. It's a little more comfortable when you have a reel in it as well, but I really like that. And then obviously I'm a huge fan of cork. I'm glad they went with cork on this instead of the foam. I feel like a lot of your sub $100 rods, when they try to add that EVA foam in, it just just ends up being really cheap, really bad quality. So I really like how they went with this. And then the contoured rod, the contoured cork right here is a really nice added touch. It just feels really great in your hands. For certain species, this stuff isn't really too big of an advantage, but for a bass and walleye rod, which most of their rods I feel like are dedicated more towards the bass and walleye aspect of things, that is very important, is reading bites, especially on a 7-foot medium. That's what you're using this for, is most likely, your finesse stuff, your drop shots, your small swim baits, things where you need to be able to pick up bites. And I feel like Fenwick knew that, and that is why they added some of these extra features in here to give you just a little bit more feel, which is, I think, a nice little attention to detail by Fenwick on that. As for the casting aspect of this, the eyelets on this are pretty good quality, and I wouldn't have any trouble throwing Ned rigs or, whatever gear I would need for bass or walleye fishing. I wouldn't see myself being limited to my cast at all with the rod, which is really nice. Now, at the time of filming this video, this rod is coming in at about $100, depending on where you shop and, what model. There may be some different models that are more or less expensive than others. I have a link down below to a website that sells almost every single model, so if you guys want to go check that out, you can. As for price, for $100, I think this is a pretty dang good, I think it's very well priced. I think it fishes like a $100 rod. There's a lot of companies now that have a sub $100 fishing rod, or, a fishing rod right at that $99.99 price point. And I think this does a pretty dang good job of competing with those other rods, especially in the last couple years. I think they've done a really great job of upgrading all the Fenwick lines. I plan on doing some reviews on the HMG, the HMX, and some of their other rods in the future, because I think they really did a great job with all of them, actually. This was actually featured in my top fishing rods under $100. This was one of the rods that was in that group, and for the reasons I talked about in this video was why I put it in that ranking. I think this is a really good quality rod. I would fish a rod like this all day for bass. If I were to throw like a 2500 size Shimano Nasi on the end of this would be like my go-to, Senkos in the trees, finesse Ned rigs, just kind of all around do everything bass rod. This would be a great setup for, doing all that type of stuff. And with a Shimano Nasi on this, you're talking $200 for the entire setup. And I think that's a pretty dang good setup for $200, all things considered. Let's go over the pros and cons of this rod here real quick. As for the pros, the multi-species aspect of this is awesome. They've got a model for tons of different freshwater fish. There's a good shot that whatever fish you're targeting, they've got a rod for, which is pretty nice. It's also a very durable rod. It feels super good in your hands. It doesn't feel really brittle, like it's gonna break, but at the same time, it's also very sensitive. It feels like a really nice quality blank, and I like that reel seat that allows your hand to actually be touching the blank as you're fishing to feel more bites. I also think for $100, this is priced really well, and I think it's going to be competitive for years to come in the market. Now, as for cons, I really couldn't think of anything, super just blaringly obvious on this, so I'm just going to leave the cons section blank on this one. As for a rating, I'm going to give this rod an 8.5 out of 10. I think it does a great job at pretty much everything that you would need this rod to do. There are some rods in that $100 range that are a little more sensitive. So if you're trying to, go like ultra finesse bass fishing, you're fishing just drop shots and Ned rigs, you really need that bite detection and you want like the highest quality you can get on that. I think there are some rods that do a little bit better job on that. But overall, I think this is a very well-rounded rod. It does a little bit of everything very well, which I think is great, especially considering that $100 price point. And they're pretty readily available at a bunch of different tackle shops. And I like Fenwick as a company. Like I said before, I've had a couple customers at my shop tell me that, they've had to deal with Fenwick and they were very pleasant to work with, which I think is kind of, a good little bonus in there. If you guys want to see more fishing rods under $100 that I would recommend, I will put that right here for you. If you guys want to see a good reel that I would match up with this, I will put that right there for you. Hopefully you guys got a kick out of today's episode. Hopefully you learned something. We'll see you guys next time on Humbug Videos.